So welcome back to Coaches of Louisville. This month we have Barry Haworth with us. So welcome to Coaches of Louisville.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We're excited to have Barry. So let's go ahead and do the introductions. Barry coaches at Assumption High School and has been there for a long time. I was researching is 1999.
Yeah.
When you first
1999.
Yeah, so first went to Assumption, but before we got to Assumption, tell us a little bit about, Barry, how you got into sport and then how you got into coaching.
Okay. So I suppose you'll get this from anyone you ask the how'd you get into the sport question, but I started out, I did all the sports. Well, growing up in Southern California in my era, the sports were baseball, basketball, football. So all the sports was just three, well, as far as I knew. So there was a league that we did, and I played that. So we cycled through the three sports. And it's actually funny because I remember in basketball one year, I'm on the bench talking to one of the guys on the team, and he was telling me how he did AAU cross country. And I'd never heard of AAU, and I'd never heard of cross country. And so I asked him, well, what is that? And he says, well, it's like running. Okay, well, what do you mean by running? He said, 2 miles, 3K. And so I kind of, what? You're not being forced to do this? Like, this is something you do on your own? No, it's fun. It doesn't sound like fun to me. It just, to me, sounded like something that there is no way I would ever want to do something like that. So kind of go through this period of time. I go up into middle school. I got introduced to track and a couple other things. And I remember at the end of, my middle school was actually junior high for us, and I finished in 9th grade. So at the end of my 9th grade year, I'm done with junior high, and they had these sign-ups for all the sports that you could do in high school, and it was for the entire year. And I knew, okay, basketball in the winter, baseball in the spring, what am I going to do in the fall? So I remember seeing cross country on there, and I thought, okay, I kind of know what that is, I guess. And I remember even asking someone that was standing there, I was like, what's cross country? And he's like, I don't know, like running around a park. You know what, I need to get in shape. So sure, sign up for cross country. So going into high school, I didn't know like really what to expect. And I did fairly well at it, got better and better. But I was sort of looking at it as, okay, this is fun, but baseball's like our family sport. And, at that point I knew I wasn't going to play basketball because basketball meant sitting on the bench, and that kind of sucked. So I'm planning to play baseball. And at the end of the cross country season, the cross country coach kept, hitting me up to, like, you need to run track, you need to run track. And I don't know, and so finally, I kind of, all right, look, I could play baseball in the summer. I'll run track. And it's funny because it really wasn't a year. I got a stress fracture. I did good at least initially, got the stress fracture, and that was kind of it. So you would think, oh, okay, so you probably I'm never doing that again. But it was the experience that for me kind of put me over the edge where, like, I like this actually. And that was it. I moved forward with running from that point forward, and I could say never look back, but I guess I probably look back a little. But it was just a great experience, and it was something I decided this is what I want to do. So, I kind of carried with it and graduated, didn't go to college. I went to junior college because in California they have, junior colleges have all the sports. So I went to junior college, I was going to run cross country and track. And the experience that I had in high school was one where everybody, it was very family-like. And so you just, like, these became your friends, and all the people I was around, it just, the experience that we had was something that, you'll just never forget. And I remember getting to college, and it wasn't like that. And I enjoyed it, but I didn't enjoy it as much. And so I kind of began to drift. I was at this period of my life where I was wondering what I wanted to do, all that kind of stuff. So I remember talking to my high school coach and asking him, like, what do you think? I think I want to coach. And he said, well, you should probably go into teaching. So, all right, sounds good. I never had thought about that. So I pursued it, wasn't sure what level. Ultimately, after kind of checking all of them probably except for middle school. I don't think I want to do that. But, I check all the levels out, and I'm thinking, all right, this looks like the level for me that would probably be the best fit. So I move in the direction of going to college, get my degree, get a job at U of L. And I remember one of the first days I got there, one of the things I experienced when I moved out here was when people hear you're from California, they'll hit you with like, oh, well, I have an aunt. She lives in California, as though I knew her. And I'd kind of, they'd look at you like, well, and, I kind of got in the habit of, she sounds familiar, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if she's the one I'm thinking of or not. So I get there, and all these guys were excited because there's another guy in the department, and he's from California. And I thought, okay, here we go. And they said, wait. His name is Barry. And I'm, okay, well, I'm a little intrigued now. And he runs. And I thought, oh, well, that's really interesting. I mean, okay, so I don't think I have a problem with meeting this guy. So I meet him, and we got to a point, where we were out running together. And, as we're talking, I told him how I had done some coaching before I moved out, but it was earlier before I pursued my graduate degree. And at that point, I wasn't sure if I was going to be coaching anymore, but, I had that experience. And so he coached at Assumption. And it was track season, and there were at least a couple different occasions, where he would ask me over the years, hey, could you come help me? And it's like, nah, man, I'm just too busy. And finally, one time he hit me with, well, I just had someone quit, and I'm really desperate. Could you at least come like one day a week? All right. So I came, and it was sort of an unofficial, it was 1998 actually. So before I officially started coaching, I started doing it. And I kind of fell in love with the idea of, this was something I'd wanted to do really bad prior to going to graduate school. And here I am in it. And I thought, here's an opportunity that I have to do the thing I always kind of wanted to do. I'm not sure if I can swing it time-wise, but I think I'm going to give it a shot. So I started out coaching track, loved it, became the official distance coach, I guess, the 1999. Wasn't the cross-country coach yet. Jim Vargo, who went on to Bellarmine, he was the cross-country coach. And so he retired, he didn't retire, but he left Assumption as a teacher and went to Bellarmine to coach. And I remember a bunch of the parents coming up and, hitting me with, oh, you need to coach cross-country now. And, oh, all right, sure. So I did it, and, basically, started out as an assistant coach in both. Ultimately, the head coaches moved on, so I kind of just pretty much did all the same stuff. I just took on a different role, but it's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it.
And now it's 2022.
Yeah.
So 1999 or 90.
Yeah. I don't even want to do that math.
Yeah, but to now, and just think of all the people that you've been able to impact through that time, and all the relationships that you've built. I see you on the field or at the track or wherever it may be with your athletes. And I remember when I was in cross country and track in my years running against your athletes, but just seeing the type of coach you are and the impact you've made. I've had multiple conversations with either Bailey Davis, because she was one of our athletes of Louisville last year, runners of Louisville, and then just different people who come in and different employees we've had. So it's been really cool to hear and listen. So and to learn about. So now focusing on cross country, because we're about to go into that season. Yeah. What do you enjoy most about being able to coach cross country?
Selfishly, the fact that we aren't doing 55,000 different events, so you can focus on one thing. And so it's much easier to have everyone sort of rally around what we're doing because we're all doing the same thing. But the big thing, I think, even though, at least on our team, we try to kind of promote this sort of ongoing group experience, group atmosphere, team culture, I think if it's strongest, it's during cross-country season. And there's a lot to love about track season too. But with cross-country, we'll do some traveling, which is always kind of cool. But it's just this, everybody seems a little closer. And maybe haven't been burned out by school yet. I don't know. But it's just something that you feel a connection that's really strong. And that's in spite of the fact that I think we have a good connection during track season, but it's a different connection, I think, in some respects. So it would be that connection that you feel, I think, as much as anything.
So when I was researching before we're having this conversation, I was reading a lot about, and what different people were saying is they're talking about the process, and that's something that you talk about a lot. Is it's not just you go out there and do it, but it's a process. So explain what the process means.
Yeah. A lot of times you'll hear people talk about results, and I think that that's important. Because, I mean, when you think about it, it's especially true in track. What gets you into fast races? Running fast times. And so that's an output measure that you can certainly use to, assign quality to an effort. But the problem, of course, is you don't always have the opportunity that you want. You're coming in, you've been training, but you're sick. I remember one year, I won't say who, but one of the sweetest girls who ever ran is a girl that went to Sacred Heart, and she was really, really good. And I remember seeing her mom beforehand. I told her, hey, good luck, because her daughter was looking at winning state. And I remember her mom looking at me with a sort of sad face. She just started her period, so I don't think she's going to do good. And that's just one of those things that can happen. And so it's very difficult to control all of the variables to make time something that turns out the way you want. But the thing that we try to stress, I think, and that has always kind of impacted me from the coaches I've had, is the idea that you can control certain variables like effort. And when you look at the process, we have kids that get very frustrated over not being able to run certain times, and have to remind them that nobody puts in work and does so for an extended period of time without ever getting a payoff. We know you're going to be good, but we don't know when. And we got to hope that it'll be soon. But if you focus on what you're doing and you try to, derive, I think your value from that kind of effort that you put in, your value as an athlete and your ability to perform, if you can focus on the input effectively to this process, I think it can be something that helps you get through those times when, the time wasn't what you wanted, but the effort is there. And so, you're on the right path. And so when you can talk about things, I think in terms of being on a path, I think that makes a big difference.
I agree 100%. And then just the process in general, and each athlete is different. And we were talking beforehand about the summer training programs and stuff, and it's individualized as much as possible because each person's coming in at different abilities, but it's all about the process. If you were to start everyone at the exact same spot, well, some of them are going to be ready for it. Others are not going to be ready. Nope. And then others, it's not going to be challenging enough. And so you have to get to know your athletes to be able to coach them. So what do you enjoy about that process for you of getting to learn where each athlete is so that way you can set them up for success?
I think ultimately it's going to be the outcome. To see someone who is taking a path that isn't the same as other people, to see that athlete ultimately still succeed, because there's this very, I think it's a very widespread misperception that the harder you work, the better you get, as though it's some kind of linear process. And I remember, in fact, I remember having a kid who was a very good student. And so her idea of how do you do good in school, you study, study, study all the time. The more effort you put into that, the better you do. And she applied that to running. And what I had to explain to her was that, you have to do what's good for you in the sense that something your body can handle, something that you're ready for. Because after a year of doing this, are you going to want to do it again next year? Or is it, I don't see how I can progress from this because I've already done everything I feel like I can do to be good, and there's nothing left for me to add. And so the idea of people being able to take wherever they begin and progress from there is something that, I think twofold. It's one, of course, like I said, the joy of seeing someone still succeed, but then also realizing that the next kid who comes along who's in a similar situation to this one, if they're not able to train as much or if they have to cross-train more, that I can take the example of this other athlete and say, this is what the other athlete did. Now, it obviously didn't create a problem for them. That's a path you can follow, and I don't know if you'll have the same amount of success, but I do know that this is a path that can lead to success. And so being able to then turn that around and use that as something that can encourage, the younger kids especially, or the kids are sort of wondering, am I on the right path? Take a lot of joy in that because you can see in a lot of these situations, you see a light go on.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah.
And another thing is, you get to Assumption, if people don't know, is a all-ladies school. So that's what you have. How many athletes do you have on your team?
So in a given year, like last year, we had about 100, I believe. We've had as many as 150 to 160. But a typical year is somewhere between 80 and 100.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you manage that? I know it takes a team, right?
It does.
But how are you able to individualize and also get to know the athletes and who you're coaching and all of that when you have so many people?
Well, full disclosure, we call it Group A and Group B. And so Group B kids are kids that are sort of a more traditional JV path that they kind of just want to be on the team. And we look at it as an opportunity to get kids involved in the sport, but without the heavier time commitment. So they'll practice 4 days a week. And they're going to be more unstructured. Now, some of them will come to me, or I know one, I think, came to Piper and was talking to her because Piper is one of our coaches. What can I do to get better? And we do help them, obviously. But we have a lot of girls. It's an unstructured. It's more of an unstructured setting, and we'll do once a week. They hate it. And we call them tempo runs. It's basically 2 miles of just go real hard, and yeah, it's what you would expect as far as how much they embrace it. But the other half they'll run. We call Group A. That's more varsity level. So I'll create workouts for them. So that's going to be roughly 40 to 50 kids. There's obviously going to be some that are going to be very similar, so it's not like 40 to 50 different workouts or anything like that. But I am very blessed. Like this last year, we had the most coaches we've ever had. My main coach, Joe Walker, who does our Group B kids, he's sort of like if someone was to create a coach for this thing we call Group B, he's that guy. And then he had Piper Gray, who also works here, and Jenny Kostecki, who's an alum. They both helped him. And then I had Madison Malloy, who's an alum who ran for center, and she helped me with Group A last year. And normally, in any given year, it's Joe and me and maybe one other person. So it boils down to, deciding who needs what and finding the time to create the stuff you need to create. You've got to do a lot of it in advance. I create season-long plans that then get broken down into week by week and all that kind of stuff, and even day by day, ultimately, when the day comes, if it's super hot or, raining or whatever. So there's a little bit of finesse there that allows me not to have to, grind out numbers that, here's what your pay should be based on, these percentages and stuff like that. So it's not super hard, but it can be time consuming. But, like anything else, when you do something, knowing that the outcome could be that you have a kid who, because they were able to train in a very effective way, get to the end of the season, run their best time ever, which is important, but it's something that does make them happy, and just feel as though they were able to contribute. These are the kind of things that, I'm happy to invest my time in something like that because of the impact that it ultimately has. Because they're not going to go on and make money at it, maybe go on to college and run, so in a sense maybe make some money, I guess. But, they're ultimately going to have a memory of, the running, the overall experience that, this one small thing is an important part. So you do what you got to do to make it an effective part too.
Right. So I know with Team A, y'all get to do some traveling and go to some different meets, which is really exciting for them and get to experience some larger meets. Teams from out of the state, obviously, because you're traveling, and just all across the country, people come in for some of these meets. So how do you prepare your athletes for something like Nike Cross Nationals or like those different events such as those?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that you prepare, because that's almost the same as when I'll get a freshman come up and she'll ask, like, how fast should I get out? You know, and I look at him like, I mean, like if I told you 92nd per 400, would you even know what that means? It's like, no. It's okay, so get out with your friends. So in a sense, you know, I remember the first time we go to a Palatine Invitational every year in Chicago. And, you know, this probably describes it as much as anything else. Although now we have kids that go on these trips, they kind of know what to expect. You know, I remember going there and I remember telling them, hey, these guys are going to be good. But that was really about it. And I remember getting there, and they didn't run 5K. They had a couple races of 2K or 2.5 miles, I think is the official distance, and then 3 miles. And so they took off faster than what our kids were used to. And it's funny because I'm standing there on the side, and I see a couple of them coming by. I mean, it's almost like they were looking at me like, what have you done? Like, these girls are so fast. It is like, I hate you. And, you know, good job. In a sense, that's almost what you kind of have to do. You let them know, look, these people are going to be competitive, but you know, at the end of this race, you're going to know what good is. And if we come back here, you're going to remember, okay, I know what good is. I know what to expect. But there's a feedback from that also, where once you know where the bar is at, you know what to train to. And so there is that effect, I think, that becomes very important in a competitive sense. So we set the bar, and now for the new kids, there's still that, they got to figure out what's going on. But it's, you know, a lot of them understanding that, okay, I know what it's going to be like, and I know what the course is like, which that makes a huge difference. Because I remember the first year, you know, with our Nike group, I remember going to Great American, and I remember telling them, okay, the course is fast. Okay, you need to be prepared for that. And when you get there, the first thing you see is this ginormous hill that you have to run up. And I remember looking at this hill and then looking at me. It's fast? It's like, what is it, short by a mile? It was the funniest thing. But, you know, they get in there and they figured it out, and they did real well. But that's really it. It's almost like, I think sometimes you just have them do it, figure out what they need to do, and then kind of work with that and build on it for the next time that they're going to be out there on the course.
Right. Sounds wise to me.
Let's hope.
So things with coaching female athletes, there's different things that we think of as we're growing in a sport and things. How do you work with female athletes to make sure that they are eating enough and to make sure they're doing all the things, sleeping? And there's a lot that goes into being an athlete, or just even being like prepared for school. You know, you have to have fuel in the tank to be able to perform in school or as an athlete. So how do you instill some different things into your athletes, not just, okay, you got to come to practice, you're ready to work hard, but making sure that they're doing the little things to help them perform better?
We have to ultimately rely on parents because, you know, quite obviously, whatever they eat is a derivative of whatever the parents have in the refrigerator. But we try to talk a lot about certain topics that I think, you know, are something that are easier for them to remember. Because if you go over too much, I think a lot of times that just gets sort of swept through, and because they've got so many things to focus on. So the things that we emphasize are going to be things like, you need to have snacks. You know, if they assume that all they need to do is to eat breakfast and lunch and dinner and that's it, very likely they're not going to get enough calories in. So we'll talk about snacks. We'll encourage them. You know, have a little handout that I give them each year that talks about, you know, there are certain kinds of snacks that you can eat that are actually going to help with recovery. Things that are going to help replace glycogen, and things that are going to allow you to ultimately run well. Whereas if you don't do these things, you may not. So we encourage them to snack. We encourage them to have snacks that have combinations of protein and carb and that type of thing. But a big thing that we also, and I feel like as the coach of female athletes, I feel a responsibility to kind of be out there preaching this, is we talk about their menstrual cycle, and we make sure that they understand, what a lot of kids, years back didn't understand, which was, if you lose your period, is this normal? And if you talk to people 15, 20 years ago and ask them, like, if you lost your period, did you ever think about, like, the ramifications of that? And it's like, no, I talked to everyone else that I knew and they all lost theirs, so I figured it was normal. And so to get them to understand that this is something that can happen, not because you have some kind of full-blown eating disorder, but because you're not getting enough calories in. And so, it can happen as a result of stress. And so we emphasize to them, you don't need to come and tell me. I've had kids that come and tell me. I'm probably one of the few, I tell them, I'm probably one of the few males that will probably ever talk about your period. And I'm sure your dads probably are kind of, talk to mom. But we do encourage the moms and them to talk. If you do happen to lose your period one month, you need to talk to mom. And I've had parents who've contacted me and say, hey, she lost her period, but I think she eats. And so we kind of get into a discussion on that. But the kids are at least exposed to these ideas that there are things that they need to kind of get on top of. Now, we're not going to have a perfect record because, there are going to be kids that maybe don't listen to what we're saying, aren't exposed to it enough, that they really can digest it, so to speak. So yeah, we try to still preach it, but we realize that it might not, catch. But we also talk about the sleep, and it's hard because, as you probably know, it's like cross-country kids are also really good students. And so, we calculated our team GPA from track. It was a lot of distance kids. It's like 3.94. These are kids that stay up late at night to get homework done. These are kids that are very high achieving in the classroom. And so when you tell them, hey, you need to get to bed by 10 o'clock, what about my homework? And I mean, I create greater stress, I think, doing that than I do, if I was to say that, than I would if I gave them a workout sometimes. And so you have to kind of make sure that they understand that, if you're not going to get your sleep in, I get it that you got to get your homework done, but you're going to have a hard time recovering from stuff. And we have to be aware of that so that I'm not pounding you in practice and you then turn around, you're getting 5 to 6 hours at most of sleep, a night. That is not a sustainable, situation. So we focus on the sleep as well. We try to talk as much as we can about that, but we really emphasize the whole idea of, menstrual cycle and getting in snacks so that they can get in the proper amount of calories. And that's something that I'm hoping that they can kind of take with them, because in the end, you should know something about how your body works. And so we see it, from that perspective. But because, now they call it red S, they used to call it caloric deficit, that's become a really big thing. And for these girls to have been aware of it, we've been talking about it now for over 10 years. For these girls to be aware of that and not, end up being like some of the athletes that our kids have met in college, never heard of it before. I feel is a good thing because they can then educate others, but also, they've prepared themselves in a way that prevents them, hopefully, from falling into, what can be a really big problem. Because the end result ends up being pretty catastrophic if, you continue to push.
I agree, and something I was very thankful that I learned as a result of injuries, unfortunately. Yes. But when I was thankful to have a doctor, a sports medicine doctor, who started educating me at a young age on all of those things, so that way I could have an understanding of how my body works and what I needed to do to prevent those things, and especially for life. It's things that you're learning that you can then use for years to come, or then eventually teach your kids or nieces or whatever the case may be for that. Or if you get back into coaching like Piper, or get into coaching like Piper, or the other people within, if they have an understanding of it, then they're able to then speak from experience. I also remember when I was in high school, Assumption would come as well. There was something that I believe it was like Baptist Health would put on. And yes, which I thought was really cool to be able to bring athletes to and be able to learn about all of those things. And, but just the education process, I think it's so important that you all as a team are educating the athletes coming through, because it's not just about them, it's clear that you all aren't just focused on the end result. You're focused on the person before the athlete, because you want them to be like healthy in life and throughout life, which is really important.
Yeah. Well, and at the end of the day, you know, these are kids that you develop relationships with. And, you know, I try to explain to them that while there may be times when you probably hate my guts, you know, like right after a really hard workout, it's like, stupid Barry. But I still care about you, and I want to see you succeed. But more than any of that, I want to see you happy, and I want to see you thriving in this situation. And you know, when you're talking to them about, you know, these things, it's, yes, there is a performance-related aspect to this, but in the end, it's your health that we're concerned about. We want you to be happy, and if you're out there doing all the right things, you're going to be a lot happier than if you're not.
Right. So now let's shift a little bit to track. Just finished that season.
Yep.
But how is that, because you said earlier you enjoy cross country because it's one event, right? A lot of things, but one event. Track, it is too many to count. Right?
Herding cats.
Right. So how do you focus from going from 5K to then focus on all types of events and be able to shift gears? And you have people who are running 100 meter, you have people who are running 3,200 meters. So, and then you've got your field events as well. So.
Yeah, we obviously have as the head coach, you know, it's my responsibility to try and get good people in the specialty areas, you know, like field events and you know, running sprints and stuff like that. And so I've been very fortunate. She's about to have a baby, so she can't continue with us, but Olivia Peak has been our sprint coach, and you know, she is someone I can just send the kids to, and I don't need to talk to her about what the training needs to be. I don't need to ask her anything other than who runs this week, and she's able to do all of that. So that eliminates a big group, you know, that potentially big group of the girls who I care about, but I don't have to worry about. Field events, the same type of thing. And Matt Grady is our jumps coach, and he's done just a phenomenal job in the same type of situation where he's basically got his own little kingdom and he kind of runs it. Now, getting these guys all together at some point is kind of important, so we try to work that type of thing in and not just at a meet. So I do have some athletes who, you know, automatically are filtered out. But the distance group is the biggest group, of course, on our team. They'll be the kids that I work with. And so what we try to do, we start out in the winter, we go all the way into the spring. Obvious exception would be any winter sport athletes that, you know, if they're doing swim or something like that. Trying to create a similar atmosphere to what we do in cross country. The difference is going to be obviously with, you know, 800 meter runners. I have kids that are probably closer to 400, 800 in terms of their strengths, and other kids who are closer to 1,600, 3,200. We train kids for the 3,200, but we really train them to be milers first, and you know, they'll do enough to be able to step up and run the longer distance. So the big change, I think, with at least the distance kids, clearly with a shorter distance, we're going to be running a little bit more speed-oriented stuff. We do a lot of speed stuff in the fall with cross country, you know, quite a bit actually, but probably a higher concentration of it, and it's all on the track when we do it during track season. And so the thing I do like about it is there are going to be kids who don't excel in cross country who can excel in track, because they have this event that they normally will run that they're better at in relative terms, like the 800, say, or to be able to step down and also run a good quality 400. We have those kids, and so that's kind of a nice bright spot. But it's really about trying to create a lot of the same types of situations and do a lot of the same types of things. You know, having fun days when they're on a recovery run. You know, we'll try and do, you know, in cross country we do something called Wacky Wednesday, and the seniors pick a theme and they all dress up, and it's quite wacky. We don't do that during track, but we'll try to do other stuff. So we'll have, you know, a scavenger hunt run or something, and I'll tell them to do the one thing I know they're all going to want to do, with maybe one exception. find something like this and take a picture with two of you in the picture by this thing. Like find a bridge and get, something I know they're going to find if they run into Cherokee. Find a bridge and get a picture of two girls in your group with this bridge. But you have to be pointing in the opposite direction. And they just love that kind of stuff. And it's fun. And so the thing with track is to, I think get yourself out of that mindset of all the different things that are going on and try to bring it all back into that sort of collective atmosphere that we get with cross country to at least get as close. Because we do get kids that come in and, I don't like track. Like, all right, well, why don't you like track? It's cool. And in the end, I think a big part of it is people are just very spread out. And there's not that sense of that core community. So if you can create that, even if you've got them all running in these different events, I think it creates an experience that, I like track now, that you'll get that response. Because I've had a number of them that I think developed a big appreciation. They still love cross country, but they developed a great appreciation for track because of, I think, just the atmosphere they were able to participate in.
So, in talking about track, and you talked about different things that you will do, but what's one of your favorite workouts?
Well,
Classic for you.
See, my favorite and their favorite will probably be different. So we do a workout that we actually named after two different alums. There's two separate workouts. You're either going to do one or the other. So the girls that run the 800 are going to do a workout that we call the receiver. So it's a workout that Catherine Receiver did, kind of, sort of. I added one thing that they didn't realize I added. But it's basically a workout that she did, which is pairs of 300s that are run at just under 800-meter race pace. You get about a minute rest in between, and then you get big rest between the pairs. And it's not too bad on the first pair. Second pair gets a little rough. We do 4, unless you're a freshman, maybe just 3 sets. But we do 4 pairs. But the very last one, we call it a tag 300, and they have to run it all out. And so when they get to that point, it's kind of like, and it's fun. Well, I'll talk about the other one too, though. So the other one is, we call it the Crawford, named after Sarah Crawford. And that was a workout that she did that's 3 sets of 4 300s. So we do a lot of different 300-based workouts. And the 300s are run, in a sense, like the mile is run. So the first lap is always faster. The second lap, you start to settle in. Third lap, you settle in even more because you still got another lap. And then the last lap, you kick. So we set the paces up. Based on that, they'll run 3 sets of 4, but the very last 300 there is also a tag 300. And they'll do it. And the thing I like most about this, and I'm assuming that none of my future tracksters are going to see this, hopefully beforehand, but I really talk up how hard it is. It's like, I don't know. I even have got a parent mad at me for doing this one time, but because she thought it was serious. I took baggies and I write their name on the baggie. It's like, all right, Susan, here you go. And I hand it to them. It's like, and the response of the new kids, the older kids, they know the routine, is like, oh boy, thanks a lot. I give it to the new kid and the eyes get really big, like, why would I need this? You can't throw up on my track. Like, you need to use this bag. And so I'll have this kid coming into the workout thinking, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna die. And they get it in, and then we turn right around at the end and go, oh my gosh, you're alive, you're not throwing up, at least not on my track, and wow, who'd have ever thought? And we use it as an opportunity for them to realize, there are going to be times when you go into something and you're just scared to death. You're going to end up doing okay, and you're going to come out of it and go, oh, I guess I didn't have to be all that afraid. And it's a great learning opportunity. So if I had a favorite workout, that would be it, even though, like I said, I don't know that they would agree with that necessarily, but yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Well, cool. So we're going to then switch gears again. You not only coach Assumption, but you do a lot with the Derby City Athletic Club.
Yes.
So tell me about Derby City. And well, we talked with Lisa Groft about it.
Yeah.
I believe it was in February. We had her in
Yeah.
here. And she was talking about how you have influenced her coaching, and she's very thankful for you.
She's
But
sweet.
She is very sweet. But then she was talking about what you do there at DCAC. So tell us about your experience at DCAC.
So I actually, when I first got into club coaching, I had the daughter of one of Swag's old running partners, Dave Long. Dave's daughter ran for me. And so I know he was associated with a club. It was Mason-Dixon Athletic Club. And I ultimately got affiliated with them. They essentially, at one point, transformed into Derby City. So I was helping with Derby City there for a while as well. And at one point I decided, okay, I think I'm going to switch over to another club that, I liked the opportunity. It was Louisville Track Club. And the guys at Louisville Track Club were great, but, I over time began to kind of realize, it's a phenomenal club for kids that are doing sprints. They don't have as much of a distance influence. I really want to get going. I want to work with distance kids. And so my original thought was maybe I'll just create a club, and we have enough of those. So I thought, man, I don't know about that. But then someone came to me and said, look, you should think about going back to Derby City. And so I did, and met with some guys, Kenny Stopman and Brooke Scott and Joe Beekler and some others, and decided, okay, I want to get involved with Derby City again. And so we began this last fall, kind of jumped in. I mean, to be honest, if you're going to run AAU, you probably need to start earlier than we did. So we kind of got a late start. But, it was one of these, it's easy to enjoy things when you do well. It's not as easy to do things when you're not sure that you're going to be very good. And I think the thing that all of us learned from the experience this last fall that really, really kind of pulled me in even more is the idea that, we had kids that wanted to run. And in the end, that's what it's all about. If they're good, awesome. If they're not good, okay, that's fine, but they want to be there. And so we had a bunch of kids who, some had more talent than others, but they really enjoyed going. And, we've got a great group of people, Kenny, Brooke, and those guys just do a phenomenal job. Angela Yoakum would be out there, Denny Glover would be out there, just do a great job. And so the kids really, I think, help create an opportunity for us to kind of, at least for me, to sort of, understand again what it's all about. You know what I mean? So my involvement there was, first, let's get this going. Didn't really expect a lot. Got more than we expected. And that was really, really cool because, it's easy to look around and see clubs who do well. The Thompson training guys are doing a phenomenal job with the kids that they have. And, they've turned, kids that aren't necessarily super good into kids that are just phenomenal. To see all of that stuff going on around and think, well, we can't be like that. And to realize, well, maybe we can, but even if we aren't, this is going to be a great experience. And we're serving, I think, a very important need. And I think, if anything, my role this year was to help with the others to kind of create that atmosphere that we wanted. I think all of us in the end wanted, which is, kids showing up who want to run and really just enjoying it. And we'll see where it goes. But I think we created a pretty good foundation that I'm excited to build on.
Yeah. I got to be a fly on the wall. I'm in the Facebook group because of the store, and it's been really fun for me to see just the change in it from when I was first invited into the group a couple years ago to now, and then where it's going. And that you have people from all over the city, and Lisa has a group that meets out in the South End, because sometimes it is difficult to get to the other areas of town. Traffic can be crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Parents don't get off work in enough time for their kids to be a part. So I think it's really cool how y'all are creating opportunities for everyone to be able to be involved. And then you're creating what you talked about earlier at the very beginning, what cross country was for you. It was that sense of community. It was the friendships that you built. And so them being able to get to be a part of that is something that they will carry on with them forever. So that experience. So.
Yeah, no, and I mean, we were able. It was kind of cool. We created a, meet on. I can't remember what night. It was like Tuesdays maybe. It was one night a week, and it might have been two a couple weeks, where they could come and they could do a workout on the track. And so this sort of pre-track because it was in the winter, and there were some nights it was cold. And those kids still showed up. I mean, it was really cool. And that's the kind of thing, if we can get groups of kids who just, I want to be out there running and this is fun and that's kind of in the end, I think, what every coach wants anyway. But it was really cool to see.
So now, speaking to hopefully future coaches, what's some pieces of advice that you would like to tell some people who are thinking about getting into coaching?
Well, I don't know that you would do this in order to coach, but I think it really helps having children because you get used to what it's like dealing with younger kids. So if you're a teacher who works with younger kids, you've kind of got that already under your belt. But learn about the kids that you're going to be working with. If anything, spend time around them. I think that makes a huge difference. One benefit for me has been I brag about this actually a lot with, especially with teenage boys. I let them know, I'm very fluent in teenage girl. If you ever need to translate anything, they tell you. I'd be happy to do that. And, so that comes with, I think, knowing them as people and, seeing them that way first. But I think the key to success always, whatever your definition of success would be, is always patience. I think patience is always the best strategy. When in doubt, be patient. It's easy as a coach to get excited about stuff. And in the end, sometimes you get too excited. And you find, I think the worst situation to be in is one where you wish you hadn't been, quite as aggressive maybe with training or quite as aggressive with racing or, that one extra race. We shouldn't have run that. It just wasn't worth the time, and the effort. So the patience thing, beyond that, I can tell you a lesson that I kind of learned, kind of knew already because I had great coaches who kind of instilled this in me, growing up. The success of your athletes can sometimes be in spite of you, not necessarily because of you. And it's very easy to look at what you do, and I've been guilty of this at times, where you sort of assume that, the reason why this kid's good is it's because I come up with all the magic combinations of workouts. And it's like, well, in truth, sometimes they do good in spite of those magic combinations, because my magic combinations weren't quite as magical as I thought. So to realize that, what matters is the kid is going to have this experience. The kid's going to come out of that experience. The kid will never forget that experience. These are the things that matter. And if I can help create opportunity for this kid to step up, I want to do that. And I suppose I probably got a bigger list than I realized, but I suppose the last thing maybe then would be also to always encourage them to have goals that are higher than what they might normally, be willing, at least in public, to commit to. One of the things that we did when the Nike girls, our group that qualified for Nike that very first year, Bailey, Catherine, Emily, Kensley, Kate, and all of them, one of the things that we did after their freshman year was we met and we had a meeting. We called it the Meeting for Girls That Want to Step Up. And so they were going to step up regardless. But I remember telling them, our goal is going to be this year to qualify for Nike. And they had no idea what it was. And so I told them, well, here's what you got to do. We have this girl in the state who's like amazing, and she's the greatest runner in the history of Kentucky. Her name's Emma Brink. Okay, and she continues to be an amazing person. And at the time, she, I think, was the fastest girl in the state. I said, all we need to do is clone her so we have 5 of these Emma Brinks on our team and run those kind of times, and we can qualify. And they looked at me like, what? It's like, so what was the point of this meeting again? And I tried to explain to them, I know this sounds crazy, but why not? Why can't it be you? Have a goal that you could fail at. And if you do, you might fail at it, but you might not. If you shoot for something that isn't all that high, what happens when you achieve it? There's nothing, am I going to go even higher? Like, you may not. But when you have goals that are high and you're willing to strive for things, you also, I think, it feeds back to the idea that in the end, you're creating a path, and we started out talking about the process thing. You create a path that can actually become a successful path for you, not just in running, but in everything else. Where you realize, if I tell people what my goal is, they'll probably laugh at me. And that's what I told them. Don't tell anyone what our goal is, because they're going to think you're crazy. But why not? And so we went after it, and they were fortunate enough to be able to achieve it. But even if we didn't, it was the kind of thing where it's like, okay, I'm not going to be happy settling for what everybody else settles for. And what everyone else settles for is fine. But for me, what should that thing be? And that, I think, as a coach, you don't start out with your first team telling them, unless they're already amazing, hey, we're going to qualify for Nike. But what you can do is you can talk about things like, our goal is to qualify for state. And they, well, we've never done that. Well, then that's our goal. We're going to get there. And there's a guy that coaches at Ballard right now, Scott Whiteneck, and we've talked, and he's talked about how these are the kinds of things. He's a new coach. This is exactly what I would tell new coaches to do. You have to do these kinds of things. Be patient with those kids, but realize they still need to have really high goals. And strive for them and see how it turns out.
Right. All right. Well,
Yay.
Some words of wisdom right
Thanks.
there. So that's all I have. Is there anything you would like to add, or?
I certainly would like to add that big shout out to Swags just for everything you guys do. Certainly to support us and what you've done this past year for us. With Middle School Dream Mile and all that kind of stuff, and having an opportunity to talk. About me is not something I necessarily do a whole lot, but having an opportunity to talk about our team and our program is great. But I'm fortunate to be around a lot of just great people, and I would certainly like to thank them for the impacts that they have had, from parents to former high school coaches, Gary Polhill, stuff like that. You don't get anywhere alone. It's always with somebody kind of holding your hand sometimes. And so, if I'm going to say anything, it's, I suppose, add anything, it would be just how thankful I am to have had, a lot of that. So.
Takes a team effort.
Yes.
Well, thank you for coming out.
Yeah, thank you.